It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Just the two of us. 10 years, one remote cabin, and the same bottle of red wine we saved from our honeymoon. That's what he promised. That's what I packed for. And that's what I believed, until I heard two sets of footsteps behind me. I turned, smiling until I saw her. Lacey, in my scarf. My best friend since college, standing next to my husband, laughing like she belonged there. And then, without a word, she kissed him. Not on the cheek. Not a polite hello. On the lips. Deep. Intimate. Like she'd done it 100 times before. And he let her. He didn't pull back. Didn't flinch. Didn't even check to see if I was watching. He knew I was watching. When they finally separated, she looked at me with that same smirk she used to wear in college. The one she flashed when she lied about stealing my sweater. Or when she told my ex I cheated on him, just because she was bored. You should have seen this coming, she said, tilting her head. Nathan didn't look ashamed. If anything, he looked relieved. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, he said, adjusting his coat. But it's been going on for a while. And honestly, it's better you found out now. I stood frozen, one hand still holding the bottle of wine I was about to open, the other reaching for the corkscrew. But I let it go, let it fall on the table with a soft clink. She took off her coat and walked further in like she owned the place. I mean, it's not like you two were doing great anyway, she said casually, glancing around. Maybe this weekend was what we all needed to clear the air. I hadn't said a word. I couldn't. I'll grab the bags, Nathan said. She turned to him, kissed his cheek, then looked back at me. Don't worry, Megan. You're strong. You'll land on your feet. That's what people say right before they push you off a cliff. I finally spoke. You planned this. She shrugged. Don't be dramatic. And then she laughed. Laughed. Like it was all some cosmic joke. I didn't laugh. I walked past them, out into the snow, to the trunk of the car. Inside was an envelope I hadn't opened yet. Thick. Legal. From my mother's estate lawyer. It arrived just that morning right before we left. I figured I'd deal with it after the trip. But now it felt like the trip was already over. And they had no idea what I'd just brought with me. The first time I saw Lacey with Nathan, she was drunk and laughing too loud at a joke he didn't even finish. It was our engagement party. She wore a dress she knew I wanted, said she found it on sale, and acted surprised when people complimented her more than me. I remember her touching his arm just a second too long. I remember him smiling back. But I brushed it off. We were all friends. And Lacey had always been that way, flirty, wild, unpredictable. That was her charm. That's what I used to love about her. Back in college, she was the storm I never saw coming. She'd borrow my clothes without asking, flirt with my crushes, get me into trouble, and then disappear when it was time to clean it up. But I defended her. Always. That's just Lacey, I'd say. She doesn't mean anything by it. I believed that for years. Even when she made a joke about marrying Nathan if I didn't. Even when she showed up to our wedding in a dress a shade too close to white. Even when she posted a picture of him on his birthday and captioned it, "You age well, old man." I told myself I was being paranoid. Nathan wasn't the type. He was quiet, steady, loyal. At least, he used to be. But after our 5th anniversary, things started shifting. He stopped looking me in the eyes. Started coming home late without excuses. Our conversations got shorter, colder. I asked him once, "Are we okay?" And he said, "We're fine. You're just in your head too much." I believed him. I always wanted to believe him. And Lacey was always around, offering to help, dropping by with wine, saying she just missed our talks. One night she brought Chinese takeout, sat on our couch, and laughed at a show Nathan and I used to watch together. I remember sitting across from them, watching how easily they leaned toward each other. How they shared little looks like they had their own language. I went to bed early that night. They stayed up, finishing the episode. I heard her heels leave at 2:11 a.m. The next morning, there were 2 empty wine glasses in the sink. And my favorite blanket, the one Nathan and I got on our honeymoon, was folded neatly on her side of the couch. Still, I said nothing, because saying something would mean admitting it. Admitting I let her too close. That I saw the signs. That I ignored them. 2 weeks before our anniversary, Lacey invited me to a spa day. My treat, she said. You've been so tense lately. I remember lying there, covered in mud, while she asked, do you ever wonder if you two settled too fast? I opened my eyes. She smiled and said, I just mean, you never really dated around, did you? I didn't answer. I just stared at the ceiling and counted the minutes until I could leave. That night, Nathan said we needed to reconnect. Said the cabin in the mountains would be good for us. Just us, he promised. I believed him. Again. I packed the scrapbook, the red scarf, the wine, and the envelope from my mother's lawyer that arrived that morning, still sealed. I was saving it for after, when we'd be relaxed, when everything would make sense again. But now I'm starting to think Lacey was never the storm. She was the flood already inside the house. And I was too busy closing windows to notice the water rising at my feet. We were supposed to have dinner by the fireplace. That's what the reservation confirmation email said, the one I found in our shared inbox. Nathan had made it weeks ago. A small cabin restaurant, just 20 minutes from where we were staying. Candlelit tables. Seasonal menu. A little surprise, he called it. I wore the green dress he used to love. Did my hair the way he liked it. I even put on the earrings he gave me on our first anniversary. I waited on the cabin's porch for nearly 20 minutes before he came out. Alone. Jacket half-zipped. Looking annoyed. Lacey's not feeling well, he said. I'm going to stay with her. You should go ahead. I stared at him, searching his face for a crack in the lie. He looked past me, down the hill toward the trees. No point canceling the reservation. It's paid. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the keys in his face and tell him I wasn't a leftover. But I nodded. Fine. I drove myself. Snow falling gently, road winding, silence suffocating. The restaurant was warm. Intimate. Every table full except one ours. I gave the hostess my name. She smiled politely, then looked behind me. Just you. I nodded. She tried to mask her surprise. Right this way. I sat alone while couples laughed around me. I ordered a glass of wine. Then another. Then the duck. Halfway through the entree, a man at the next table leaned over. Tough night, he asked. I smiled politely. Anniversary, I said, and his eyes widened. And you're alone? I nodded again. His date looked at me with pity. That's horrible, she whispered, not quietly enough. The waiter brought out a complimentary dessert. From the chef, he said, placing it gently in front of me. For our anniversary guests. A single candle flickered on the plate. Chocolate script read, 10 sweet years. I sat there, staring at the cake, feeling the heat rise to my ears. Everyone was looking. Not directly, but through glances, murmurs, eyebrows raised. I didn't cry. I blew out the candle. And as the room dimmed again, I felt something inside me go cold. I boxed up the dessert and left a generous tip. The drive back was slower. Snow thicker. Cabin darker. I pulled up quietly, headlights off, and saw the soft flicker of firelight through the front window. Their shadows danced behind the curtain. Close. Relaxed. She laughed. I heard it through the crack in the window as I passed. I walked around the back, boots crunching over frozen pine needles, and stood behind the cabin for a long time. Watching. Listening. Remembering. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a replacement. And I'd just been dismissed. Dismissed from my own anniversary. My own marriage. My own life. But they'd made one mistake. They'd forgotten what I had in the trunk. And that envelope still sat on top of my suitcase, unopened. For now. I couldn't sleep that night. The fire in the cabin burned low, but my skin stayed hot, flushed with something I hadn't felt in years. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something sharper. I lay on the bed, still in my green dress, the zipper biting into my side. Their voices were faint through the wooden walls, muffled laughter, and the occasional pop of a wine cork. She was in my home now. In my place. In my life. And yet, for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt completely awake. I stared at the ceiling, then at the shadows dancing across the walls. It was all so familiar, yet completely wrong. Like walking into your own kitchen and finding every drawer rearranged. Lacey had always been like that. Invasive. Thoughtless. Her way of showing love was taking something from you, then claiming she improved it. She called it borrowing, just being efficient, just filling the gaps. But the gaps were always mine. And Nathan? He was never bold enough to take. He just stood there and watched while others did it for him. I kept replaying the moment she kissed him. The way he didn't resist. The way he looked almost grateful. Grateful to be handed a way out without having to ask for it. I used to think that made him kind. Now I realize it made him weak. I thought about every dinner I cooked alone, every time I rearranged my schedule around his meetings, every time he brushed off my questions with, "Don't make a thing out of it." And I didn't. I never made a thing out of it. That was my role. The wife who doesn't complain. The friend who always forgives. The daughter who doesn't question the will. My eyes drifted toward the envelope on the dresser. Still sealed. Still heavy. It had been days since the attorney called. He left a voicemail saying, "You'll want to see this in person. There are complications." I had been too busy packing, pretending this trip could fix what was already broken. I slipped out of bed, walked barefoot across the cold floor, and picked it up. My name in thick ink across the front. My mother's handwriting. I traced the loops in the C, the slight smudge in the tail of the R. Even in death, she had a way of leaving me puzzles. I opened it slowly. Inside was a second envelope. Smaller. Handwritten. No signature. Just one line. Don't trust what they show you. Not even him. Beneath it was a folder, legal documents. Bank statements. Property transfers. A clause. A name I hadn't seen in years. And then, Nathan's. On the last page. In a signature line he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near. My blood froze. My mother hadn't just left me the estate. She'd changed it. Months before her stroke. And someone had tried to reverse it. Illegally. Sloppily. Stupidly. His name was scribbled beside a date, just weeks after she passed. Just after he offered to handle the paperwork for me. I sat back down on the bed, documents spread across my lap. They didn't just betray me in love. They tried to rob me in silence. In paperwork. In trust. This wasn't just an affair. This was a plan. A coward's plan, full of shadows and shortcuts. And I had just uncovered the first thread. I looked out the window again. The snow was falling thicker now. The mountains quiet. I could hear her laugh again, soft, syrupy, smug. And then I knew. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't throw things or beg or make a scene. That's what they'd expect. That's what they were ready for. Instead, I'd do what I've always done. I'd listen. I'd watch. I'd wait. But not for forgiveness. This time, I'd wait for my moment. And when it came, God helped them both. The next morning, I made pancakes. Not out of love. Out of curiosity. I wanted to see how they'd act in daylight. Whether guilt would settle into their faces, or if they'd already edited the story in their heads. I knew Lacey would come down first. She always did. She hated waiting. I could hear her slippers before I saw her, soft, designer, wrong for the cold cabin floor. She walked into the kitchen wearing my robe. The one Nathan bought me 3 birthdays ago. "Smells good," she chirped. I didn't answer. Just flipped the pancake, let it sizzle. Slid it onto a plate. She poured herself coffee like she lived there. Like she always had. I studied her face as she scrolled through her phone. No shame. No hesitation. "So, about last night," she began. I turned, eyebrow raised. "You're not mad." "Why would I be?" I said. It's not the first time you've taken something of mine. Her smile faltered for a half second. Then she laughed. Still got that bite, huh? Nathan came in then, rubbing his eyes. Something smells amazing. He kissed her temple, not even glancing at me. She made pancakes, Lacey said. Isn't that sweet? I watched them eat. Watched her feed him a bite like it was a honeymoon. Like I didn't exist. And I realized that was the plan. If I didn't scream, if I didn't fight, I'd vanish on my own. Quiet erasure. Passive deletion. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. After breakfast, I told them I was going for a walk. Needed fresh air. Lacey offered to come. I said I needed headspace. She didn't argue. Outside, the snow had stopped. I walked further than I normally would, phone in hand, documents scanned to PDF the night before. I called the estate attorney, told him what I found. The clause, the signature, the dates. He went silent. He told us he was your legal rep, the man finally said. That you were emotionally unfit to handle the estate. We had no idea you never signed. I didn't, I said. But I will. Now. I sent him what he needed. He promised to act fast. Said there would be consequences. Possibly criminal, he added. Good, I replied. When I got back, the cabin smelled like perfume and wine. Lacey was stretched out on the couch with a book. Nathan was nowhere in sight. She looked up. Everything okay? Perfect, I said. Needed that walk. She tilted her head. You seem different. I am. She gave a tight smile. Well, good. That night, I waited until they were asleep. Then I opened my laptop and booked a second room in town under a fake name. I packed slowly, quietly, left my green dress hanging in the closet. Let them keep the ghost of who they thought I was. I drove down the mountain, checked into the inn, and sent one final email. To her. Not Lacey. My mother's sister. The real executor. The one Nathan forgot existed. Attached were the documents. The forged signature. The photos. The story. I didn't say much. Just, he's not just a cheater. He's a thief. And I'm ready to testify. Then I powered down the laptop, pulled the covers over my shoulders, and for the first time in months, slept without dreaming. I returned to the cabin 2 days later. Calm. Composed. Carrying croissants and a lie. Sorry I disappeared, I said. I needed time. I stayed with a friend from college in town. No big deal. Nathan looked relieved. Lacey raised an eyebrow. You just left. I didn't want to ruin your weekend. I smiled, soft and level. You two seemed happy. They didn't know how to respond. Guilt flickered across his face like a storm cloud trying to decide whether to rain. She reached for her mug and didn't meet my eyes. I moved through the cabin like I belonged there. My robe was folded. My wine glass rinsed. My books stacked to the side. She'd begun clearing me out. Slowly. I placed the croissants on the counter. Anyway, I figured we should finish the weekend on a good note. I booked massages for tomorrow morning. My treat. You did. Lacey blinked. You're being weirdly cool about this. I told you, I said. I'm done fighting. That night, I cooked dinner. Chicken marsala, his favorite. Set the table. Lit candles. Nathan kept glancing at me like I'd grown a second head. You're okay? Of course, I said. Some things aren't worth crying over. I watched her twitch at that. Watched him try to read the subtext. There was none. Not the kind they could see. But underneath, I was rewiring the entire room. I began asking questions. Casual ones. So, how are things at your job, Lacey? Still working with that awful CFO. Oh, I quit, she said quickly. Needed space to, find myself. I smiled. I'm glad you're free now. You'll need time. She hesitated. For what? For everything that's coming. I stood, cleared the plates, hummed an old song Nathan hated. When they went to bed, I stayed up, updating the Google Drive folder I shared with the attorney. Added photos from the cabin. Videos. One short clip where Nathan, tipsy on wine, said, "Megan will get over it. She always does." The next morning, they left early. Said they needed to talk things through. I stayed behind to clean up. As I folded the blankets, I took one last photo of the living room, the scene of the crime. Before they drove off, I handed Nathan a small white envelope. "You'll need this." "What is it?" "Just some final paperwork from the estate." "Should I open it now?" "Whenever you want." They left smiling. I locked the door behind them. Then I sat down with my laptop and waited for the notifications. The attorney messaged first. "Everything is submitted. Court hearing date confirmed. Their tampering is documented. Good work." Then a second message from my aunt. "You'll have full control soon. I'll testify if needed." Finally, one from Lacey. "What the hell is this? Did you know your mom gave you everything? Like, everything?" I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to the lawyer. By that evening, Nathan had called twice. Left a voicemail. "We need to talk. I think there's been a mistake. Please call me back." There was no mistake. Not anymore. It happened faster than I thought. The court date came within 2 weeks. Nathan didn't even show. His attorney did. Flustered. Unprepared. Lacey sat in the back of the courtroom, sunglasses on, chewing her nails like a teenager caught shoplifting. The judge read the document slowly, then paused on the forged signature. "Are you telling me the defendant filed this while acting as his wife's representative without her written consent?" My attorney stood. "That's correct, Your Honor." He posed as her legal proxy and altered her mother's estate against her wishes. The judge shook his head. "That's fraud." Lacey let out a small gasp. Nathan's attorney whispered something to her. She whispered back, frantic. I didn't say a word. Just watched. Calm. Like I was at the theater. A week later, I received the official decision. Full control of the estate. Retroactive reversal of all tampering. And a referral for criminal investigation on Nathan's part. I sent them both a copy. No note. Just the ruling. He called. 8 times. Left a voicemail that started with, "You don't understand," and ended with, "Please, Megan, I was scared." I never called back. Then came the email from Lacey. I didn't know. I swear. He told me everything was already handled. I thought we were just moving on. Please don't let this ruin us. Us. That word was the final joke. I didn't respond. That weekend, I hosted a small gathering at the property my mother left me. Just friends. People who never chose sides. They brought wine, laughter, old memories. One of them asked if Nathan would be joining. I said, not unless he breaks parole. That got a laugh. Someone else asked about Lacey. I shrugged. She's trying yoga, or a podcast, or therapy, or all 3. I wasn't cruel, just honest. She had always bounced between identities. Maybe this time she'd stick the landing. Later that night, I sat on the porch with a glass of red and watched the sun disappear behind the trees. For the first time in what felt like years, the silence felt like mine. Not forced, not lonely, just peaceful. A week later, I got one final letter. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Lacey. A full 4 pages of tangled apologies, excuses, memories from college, references to what we used to be. She ended it with, I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know who I was without you. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and dropped it into the fire. She was right about one thing. She didn't know who she was without me. And now she had no choice but to find out. 3 months later, I changed my number. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my closest friends. I didn't want updates. I didn't need closure. The last I heard, Nathan was working on himself. The phrase made me smile. Lacey had moved states. Tried real estate. Then failed skincare. Then silence. I assumed she'd find a new version of herself eventually. She always did. The house my mother left me was quiet in the mornings. The birds came back in spring. The porch swing creaked when I sat down with coffee. My hair grew longer. I dyed it. Not because of heartbreak. Just because I wanted to. I started writing again. Short stories at first. Then longer ones. One even got published. A friend sent me the link without realizing it was mine. That felt like a small, quiet win. One evening, I walked into the town bookstore and saw a copy of that story printed in a local anthology. I didn't say anything. Just stood there, looking at the name on the page. It felt good not to be anyone's wife, or shadow, or scapegoat. Just me. No fanfare. No final confrontation. No Instagram-worthy comeback. Just stillness. And breath. And space. I think that's the part no one talks about when they imagine revenge. They picture the moment of impact. The explosion. But the real power? The real reward? It's in the silence that follows. The day you realize you're no longer carrying their weight. The moment you exhale and don't immediately brace for the next blow. I didn't win. I just stopped playing. And somehow, that was more than enough.